This video is 3D extrusions. In this video, we'll discuss extruding a 2D layer into a three-dimensional image. To begin, let's go into the File menu and choose Open Project. Navigate to the AE08 Lessons folder and open up the file called 08 3D Extrusions. 3D extrusions were recently introduced into After Effects. Now, don't think you'll be creating the next Pixar film with the program. It's not really built for that kind of 3D work. However, you can do some very nice 3D extrusions of text or logos to enhance your projects in terms of motion graphics. As far as what you can extrude in After Effects, this includes text layers, vector graphics that you can import in from a program like Illustrator, as well as vector shape layers that you can create in After Effects using the shape tools. You can also now import 3D objects built in Cinema 4D as well. Let's start by making the text layer a 3D layer. Go ahead and click the 3D switch here for the text layer. When it comes to extrusions, we'll need to change something else with regard to the composition settings as well. Go into the Composition menu and choose Composition Settings. Go to the Advanced tab, and then go to the renderer and set it from Classic 3D to the Ray Trace 3D. This will allow us to extrude images three-dimensionally, but you'll notice that you lose some functionality in the process. I'd encourage you to examine the list of what gets disabled here, as these things may be important for the needs of your project, such as things like blending modes and track mats that get disabled as a result of this change to the 3D renderer. Go ahead and hit OK, and then hit OK again to commit the change with the new renderer. You'll have to do this composition by composition for any compositions that you want to include a 3D extruded layer like this. To see the extrusions a little bit more effectively, let's rotate the text slightly just so we can see the results of the extrusions as we work on them. Click on the text layer and then hit R as in rotation. Go to the Y value of the orientation property. Click on it. Let's set it to 40 degrees. This will pivot the text a little bit towards us, so we'll be able to see the extrusions a little bit more effectively. You can go ahead and close up the layer properties then, but then go ahead and reopen them because we're going to need some additional properties to work with. If this opens up with the transform properties, go ahead and just collapse those down because what we want are the geometry options. Go ahead and open up those properties. To stylize this, let's set the bevel style to concave. You'll notice that it may take a few minutes for your screen to refresh anytime you make a change. The 3D process can be very intensive on the computer. The process in terms of how long it will take to update the screen will be dependent on your computer's power. Let's set the bevel depth to about 10. Let's set the whole bevel depth to 100. And let's also set the extrusion depth then to about 35. Should start to notice a considerable difference here to your text in terms of its depth now, and of course the three-dimensional appearance we have with the text. You'll want to try different settings out and experiment to see what the results are like as you go. Don't forget, all these are animatable properties, so the text could start off flat and then grow three-dimensionally. Let's go ahead and collapse the properties back down for geometry options. Before we move on to the material options, we're going to add another component to this. We're going to add a light layer, as light layers can dramatically change the appearance of 3D layers created here in After Effects. Let's go under Layer, New, and Light. We'll leave the light name on Light 1. Make sure the light type is set to Spot. Set the color to white. Set the intensity to 100, the cone angle to 100, and the cone feather to 30%. We'll leave the other settings on the defaults. You can leave cast shadows checked and the shadow darkness at 40% with the shadow diffusion at 10 pixels. Go ahead and click OK. This will start to change the appearance immediately of our three-dimensional text. We'll need to make some adjustments in terms of the light's position, which was what we'll work on next in terms of dialing all this in. Let's make some adjustments to the position of the light. Keep the light layer selected. Come over to the comp window. Hover over the 3D arrow controls. Look for the one called Z. Once you see the Z arrow, click and drag to the right or back to create some distance between the light and the text layer, which of course will change the lighting on it. Again, it may take a few moments for your screen to refresh, but now we can start to see the text a little bit more easily. I'm going to hold down the space bar and move up a little bit just so I can see the controls for the light again. We might want to readjust it vertically a little bit too. So I'm going to come up to my Y arrow, the green one. Once I see the letter Y, I'll click and drag down a little bit just to point it a little more directly at my text. And again, it might take a moment for it to refresh. From there, I'll hold down my space bar and move the screen back up again so I can see the whole screen. Let's go ahead and open up the Light 1 properties then too to start working on the light options here a little bit too. Let's go to the light options and open up those properties as well. Let's go to the intensity and brighten it up a little bit. Let's take it up to about 150%. This will brighten up the text a little bit more as a result. We can go ahead and close up the light options then. So as you can see, you'll have to play with this a little bit as your results will vary depending on the distance of the light and the color of the objects. Once we have the light in place now, we can start to work with other options in terms of the appearance of the three-dimensional text. Come down to the material options here for the text layer. Open that up. If you start to work with values such as specular intensity and shininess and metal, they can have an interesting effect in terms of the appearance of the text with regard to its relationship to the light. So let's go ahead and start to change some of those settings. Let's diminish some of the shininess here. Let's go to the specular intensity and lower it to about 25%. This will diminish the effect of the lights a little bit. We can also pull down the specular shininess to about 50%. Metal will give it more of sort of a metallic appearance to it. So we can diminish that maybe a little bit too. We'll take it down to about 75%. Of course, these settings are very subjective. You'll have to play with them to get the results that you may be looking for. Don't forget, you can animate all these different properties. As you can see, there's a lot you can do to stylize the appearance of your 3D objects between the 3D layer options, as well as what you can do with regard to the light layer settings as well. In this video, we discussed extruding a 2D layer into a 3-dimensional image.